ko hangadam WAD.
West Africa Democracy Radio.
Je suis à Dakar, au Sénégal, et j'écoute la WADR 94.9 FM.
West Africa Democracy.
West Africa Democracy Radio.
We are West Africa Democracy Radio.
94.9 FM.
Dakar, Senegal. It's you speaking.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. This is Newslink, and here are the top stories. Over 13,000 Ghanaians flee Benyeri in the Savannah region over protracted conflict. Ivorian government spokesperson defends President Ouattara's fourth-term bid, citing constitutional provision.
If we believe that the end of democracy is expression of the people, if Ivorians have decided to continue for 20 years of stability, 20 years of peace, 20 years of development, we cannot blame them.
Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025 wraps up in Abuja with calls for women's health and economic empowerment.
It is essential that we evolve transformative strategies that encompass inclusive, equitable development, one that is grounded in the understanding that economic progress must be accompanied by genuine representation and access to sustainable opportunities.
And Guinea-Bissau, the opposition rejects Embalo's refusal to leave office after term expiration. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Christopher Aticho with Newslink.
Many thanks for connecting with us, and a warm welcome to our listeners within and beyond the sub-region. Newslink begins in Benin, where the opposition has broken its silence on the nomination of Wadani as presidential candidate. The Democrat Party, led by former President Thomas Boniyaye, is demanding his resignation from ministerial duties, citing a conflict of interest over the issuance of tax clearance. The party also accuses the government of plotting to sideline it from the April 2026 elections. More details with Augustine Colley.
The opposition Democrats Party has raised concerns over what it describes as a conflict of interest involving Rumot Wadani. The party argues that as Minister of State in charge of the Economy and Finance, Wadani also oversees the General Directorate of Taxes, the very institution responsible for issuing tax clearance certificates required for presidential candidates. According to the Democrats, in a functioning democracy, the minister should resign from his post to avoid any appearance of bias. Failing such a step, the party of former President Boniyaye is calling for the tax clearance platform to be made fully accessible without restrictions to all eligible citizens. The opposition insists that transparency in this process is essential to safeguard fairness ahead of the 2026 polls. In addition, the Democrats accuse the government of engaging in maneuvers to silence them from the upcoming elections. They allege that the presidential majority in parliament is working to amend the electoral code in ways that could restrict opposition participation in the presidential race. The controversy comes just days after Rumot Wadani was chosen to represent the ruling coalition in the April 2026 elections, following President Patrice Talon's decision not to seek a third term. Meanwhile, the Democrats Party is preparing to rally behind a single candidate in hopes of strengthening its chances at the ballot box.
And there was a report filed by our correspondent in Cotonou, Aziz Adam Sole, and voiced by Augustine Colley. In Côte d'Ivoire, preparations are ongoing a few weeks before the October 25 presidential election amid a tense political atmosphere. On Thursday, the Ivorian government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly made a statement as a guest on a national television. He addressed several issues, including President Alassane Ouattara's fourth candidacy and the removal of opposition leaders from the electoral list. Abdoulaye Hassan has more in this report.
Less than 8 weeks before the October 25 presidential election in Côte d'Ivoire, Alassane Ouattara's full-term bid continues to stir controversy. The debate, which has been around the legality of his candidacy, was addressed by Amadou Coulibaly, the Ivorian government spokesperson. He asserted that the president has not violated the constitution.
If we believe that the end of democracy is expression of the people, if Ivorians have decided to continue for 20 years of stability, 20 years of peace, 20 years of development, we cannot blame them. Everything will be decided at the ballot box. Those who think that 15 years is not enough, I respect their opinion. But it is certainly not the opinion of the majority of Ivorians who called for President Ouattara's candidacy.
Amadou Coulibaly also responded to the question asked about the removal of opposition figures Laurent Gbagbo and Tidiane Cham from the electoral lists.
Côte d'Ivoire is a state governed by the rule of law. The rule of law urges respect for the text. Here we have a case of political personnel who lack the stature of statesman. When one is accustomed to preferential treatment, when one is accustomed to taking the lessons of the ladder, one might think that one can violate the text of one's country with impunity. We are a country that wants stability.
Ahead of the October vote, the debate is intensifying around the incumbent head of state's eligibility. While the opposition denounces an unconstitutional fourth term, it simultaneously asserts that its main leaders, excluded from the electoral process, are fully registered. The Constitutional Council, the country's highest court, is scheduled to publish the final list of candidates on September 10, 2025.
Abdoulaye Hassan with that report filed in by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Marcel Aristoble. Let me take you to Burkina Faso, where the country is taking steps to formalize a traditional way of settling disputes known in the Mori language as Fasobu Kaore. The mechanism is designed to complement the country's justice system. A new bill adopted by the Council of Ministers creates local dispute resolution bodies at both village and urban levels. Sankule Janko tells us more in this report.
The Fasobu Kaore law was adopted by the Council of Ministers to deepen justice delivery in the country and aims to be a law that authorizes traditional conflict resolution mechanisms. According to the Minister of Justice, Edaso Rodrigo Bayala, the dispute resolution bodies will be established in villages and urban areas.
That is to say, in localities where, of course, these instances are already determined by the laws and customs, these appeals will be brought before these authorities. The law has provided for the establishment of appeal bodies so that those who are not satisfied with the decision can, of course, appeal the decision.
The government is convinced that the institutionalization of these mechanisms will help prevent conflicts, particularly those related to rural land disputes, which are now the responsibility of traditional justice. This justice system will complement the traditional justice system.
There will be a chain of transmission to ensure this complementarity. For example, if a person born in a locality is indifferent, if it involves a criminal matter, we call it offenses. For example, someone who was killed. These local firefighters, if they are seized of such a case, must immediately report to the prosecutor. It is up to the prosecutor to assess whether this falls within their jurisdiction and whether the parties have decided to resolve these various defects and whether the settlement will not allow the disturbance of public order to persist.
This law shares similarities with the People's Tribunals of the Revolution under Captain Thomas Sankara. These tribunals allowed citizens to participate in monitoring the trials of former leaders.
A report by our Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kaba and presented by Sankule Janko. Still in Burkina Faso, the transitional government has dismissed 21 public officials for using fake diplomas to gain employment in the civil service. The announcement was made on Thursday, September 4, 2025, by the Minister of Civil Service, Labour and Social Protection, Matthias Traoré. According to him, the affected individuals were employed across 9 different ministerial departments. Minister Traore stated that the dismissal demonstrates the government's firm commitment to combating corruption and restoring integrity in the public sector. He said, in addition to the dismissal, the government has adopted a new decree establishing a priority clause for serving the state.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let me take you to Ghana for some disturbing developments where more than 13,000 Ghanaians have fled across the borders into Cote d'Ivoire following violent crashes in Benyeri in the Savannah region. The Interior Minister, Mohamed Muttaka Mubarak, says the situation has created a major humanitarian crisis with thousands more displaced internally across 4 regions. WADR's Nadi Detete reports.
The Interior Minister, Mohamed Mubarak Muntaka, has confirmed that more than 13,000 Ghanaians have crossed into Cote d'Ivoire as refugees following clashes in Benyeri in the Savannah region. The minister further explained that the violence has displaced people across 4 regions, with some remaining internally displaced in the Upper West and the Savannah.
Well, it's just so unfortunate that it came to this. All this started, I think, on the 24th, where there was some dispute about the piece of land, which is just about a quarter of a plot, and that led to the death of 3 Gunjas and 2 Grifos. And unfortunately, it's immediately spread to the Bole Bambor area. Unfortunately, it led to all this unfortunate situation. If you know the terrain very well, it has a border community with Cote d'Ivoire. So when that happened, a lot of people crossed the borders. Working with the Ivorian authorities, we can confirm that the exact number communicated to us by the government of Cote d'Ivoire is 13,253. Yes, our DCs and MCs are not more senior government officials. We've done our best to reach out to them, and we are in touch with them. We are supporting them the best that we can.
The minister said governments, local assemblies and the UNHCR are working to provide relief while also praising Ghana's security agencies for their sacrifices. Talks with traditional leaders and the Peace Council are underway to restore calm, with a committee expected soon to investigate the clashes and propose solutions.
I was tasked by the president and I led the delegation to the Yagbonga. We've been able to make a lot of progress. The delegation of Grifo's leadership are in Gamambu with the Peace Council to see the Yagbonga. And I'm very optimistic with the way we are working. Hopefully, latest by Monday, we are setting up a committee to investigate into details all this and then come out with a report on how best we can avoid this thing from reoccurring.
The Benyeri conflict, triggered by a land dispute, erupted a little over a week ago and has displaced thousands across 4 regions. Security forces remain deployed as government works with traditional authorities to ensure peace and allow the displaced families to return home. For WADR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
Still in Ghana, the Minister for Communication, Sam George, has confirmed that MultiChoice Ghana has agreed to reduce its subscription prices following intense regulatory pressure. This comes after MultiChoice finally provided the data requested by the government regarding comprehensive pricing data, specifically including a breakdown of bouquet prices, tax components, and price comparison with at least 6 other African countries. This information was deemed essential to support fair, evidence-based discussions on potential subscription fee reductions. The submission of this information cleared the way for the information of a pricing review committee. In response, the government has set up a special committee to determine the new pricing structure, and a September 21 deadline has been established for finalizing the reduction plan. Here is the Minister for Communication, Sam George.
MultiChoice has requested a 30-day window for the committee to arrive at what percentage of reduction will be achieved. So let's be clear. They have finally accepted that there will be a reduction. Now they want us to discuss the level of reduction. I believe, as minister, that we do not need 30 days. 14 days is enough for us to reach this decision, inclusive of weekends. Therefore, The committee has a strict 14-day mandate, inclusive of weekends, to conclude its work and present a suitable price reduction structure for the people of Ghana by the 21st of September 2025.
Ghana's Minister for Communications, Sam George. Let's turn attention to Nigeria, where 2 days of gathering for Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025 turned the spotlight on women's health and economic empowerment, from warnings about shrinking donor support to calls for bold statements. Levers, reform speakers press for urgent action. From Abuja, WADR's Usman Umar reports.
The tone on day 2 of the summit was one of urgency. A senior official of the Gates Foundation, Ekenem Isiche, warned that dwindling international aid is threatening women's health in Nigeria. He said bilateral aid to Nigeria has fallen by 40%, while funding for maternal and child health dropped 67%.
Aid to donor countries, specifically Nigeria, has dropped by 40%. That means that programs that intentionally supported women's health and empowerment were affected. Number 2, funding towards maternal and child health has dropped by 67%. That means for every 3 women in your community, 2 of them will not have access to critical women's health commodities that they had last year.
Isiche urged Nigeria to move beyond policy launches to real implementation backed by gender-responsive budgeting and timely fund releases. Also speaking, Kwara State First Lady and Chair of the Nigeria Governors Spouses Forum, Olufolake Abdulrazak, stressed the need for transformative strategies to accelerate gender equity. She pointed to Kwara's reforms, including a 35% gender inclusion law, 6 months of maternity leave, and a cabinet with equal male and female representation.
While economic empowerment outcomes extend beyond income and employment, they also directly influence health, nutrition, and equitable access to resources. Hence, it is essential that we evolve transformative strategies that encompass inclusive, equitable development, one that is grounded in the understanding that economic progress must be accompanied by genuine representation and access to sustainable opportunities.
She said first ladies across Nigeria are driving initiatives on healthcare, girls' education, and tackling gender-based violence, warning that entrenched disparities in politics and economic life are holding back progress. Organizers say the summit is designed to move conversations into commitments that break systemic barriers against women and girls. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
You're still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. We're also live on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. I am Christopher Ticho, and here is a reminder of our top stories. Over 13,000 Ghanaians flee Gbenyeri in the Savannah region over protracted conflict. An Ivorian government spokesperson defends President Ouattara's 4th-term bid, citing constitutional provision. Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025 wraps up in Abuja with call on women's health and economic empowerment. Still ahead in the news, Guinea-Bissau opposition reject Imbalo's refusal to leave office after term expiration. We do have the guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let me take you to Guinea-Bissau, where President Umaro Sissoco Embalo's mandate officially expired on Thursday night. But he has made it clear that he intends to remain in office until a new head of state is elected. The presidential election is scheduled for November 23, 2025, and Embalo insists that the end of his term does not automatically mean his departure from power, a position the opposition strongly rejects. The Alliance for Peace coalition has gone further, calling for a democratic transition. According to the coalition, such a step is necessary to ensure peace and stability during this sensitive pre-electoral period. Opposition leaders insist that only a transfer of power can guarantee a fair process in the run-up to the polls. Meanwhile, Umaru Sissoko Embalo has already confirmed his intention to seek a second term. He made the announcement in mid-August during the swearing-in of Brahima Kamara as Prime Minister, following the dismissal of Rue Barros earlier that month. In Togo, the country is advocating for better defense of Africa interests. The country has just launched its diplomatic season under the theme New Geopolitical Rivalries and Africa's Strategic Autonomy. For more details, let's join Imo Edit for that.
Before the diplomatic and consular corps present in Togo, the Togolese Minister of Foreign Affairs, Robert Duce, reaffirmed the country's diplomatic commitment to working for African causes and defending the continent's interests.
Our diplomacy will continue to carry the path of Togo and that of Africa to assert and prevail Togolese and African priorities on the international scene.
This 2025 edition of the Togolese diplomatic season is marked by an inaugural public conference under the theme New Geopolitical Rivalries and Strategic Autonomy for Africa. For the speaker, Aberman Kulimala, conflict between African countries do not allow for rapid regional development.
Conflicts between African countries do not allow for rapid regional development. We should resolve our problems on our continent. It is truly a little surprising that it is the United States that is allowing a real dialogue to begin between the DRC and Rwanda. This gesture must be made by the African Union, by African leaders, because if we do not resolve our affairs on our continent, how can we achieve real African integration? From this, we must also establish real democracy in our countries so that the free expression of universal suffrage must be the most developed form in our countries. It is not yet conceivable that many countries would renounce the expression of universal suffrage, that we would put an end to the plural expression of political parties. All of these are obstacles to development.
Last February, Togo commenced a major initiative brought before the African Union. This comprises the official recognition of slavery, colonization and deportations as crimes against humanity and genocide. This historic decision adopted by the Conference of the African Heads of State marks a symbolic and political turning point for the continent's collective memory.
CV Wadrago's report presented by Imo Edits.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
This segment of the news takes us back to Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where Day 2 of the Gender and Inclusion Summit 2025 turns the spotlight on women's health and economic empowerment. From warnings about shrinking donor support to calls for bold state-level reforms, speakers pressed for urgent action. Our guest is Amanda Ezekwe Okogu, Executive Director for Project at the Center for Ability Rehabilitation and Empowerment in Nigeria.
The summit was an eye-opening one, and it has led to a lot of conversations. Basically, they talked about one of the breakout sessions that I was in. We talked about maternal health in women. We've gotten to a stage where no woman should die when giving birth. But because many things have not been put in place, having proper healthcare centers, making provisions for it, and also educating traditional birth attendants who should be properly educated during this period. Because most of these women who go to traditional birth attendants, it's only when things get bad that they go to the hospitals or the health centers. So no one should be left behind when it comes to this. No pregnant woman deserves to die.
During the course of the conversation, what are some of the challenges that actually keep coming in so far as maternal health is concerned within the region?
Poverty is one key factor because they feel the healthcare is so expensive. Most times they cannot afford it. These are people that can't even afford 3 square meals, not to talk of having money to buy drugs. And also many of them are not able to afford their basic antenatal requirements. So poverty plays a major role in all this.
It's interesting that you've just mentioned about poverty. In that case, how does shrinking donor support affect women's programs?
It's going to affect them a lot. I don't even know how to explain it, because these are people that actually depend on donors. And now that they have really cut it off, now take, for instance, women in the internally displaced in Nigeria. We know that most of these NGOs go there to help them. Imagine there are no supports anymore. We're going to have a very high rate of maternal health, because it's something they always look forward to, because they know that there's somebody there to care. But when we don't have the funds, especially probably self-care, health strategies and all that for it, because it's going to affect nutrition too on the children. Knowing that at internally displaced persons camps, especially some in Nigeria, most of them depend on donors. Now that the funds are cut down, is going to be a major challenge.
In that case, knowing that the shrinking donor support will obviously affect the women's program, what specific reforms are needed at the state level in that case?
Reforms, there are many of them. Now, the first one we should talk about is policy and legal reforms. They are major. Because if we can have the adoption of gender-responsive budgeting at federal and state level, it's going to help strengthen the legal framework to protect women, protect children, and even protect persons with disability. Then we're also talking about economic and financial reforms. Then another thing is governance reforms. Now in Nigeria, we're talking about the reserved seats for women. If there is no increasing women representation in leadership and decision-making spaces, it's going to be a major problem, because they tell you if you feed a woman, you're feeding the nation. Mm-hmm. They should have safer mobility, and we should also include them in transport reforms, healthcare, education, and so many other things.
How can economic empowerment improve women's overall well-being?
Now, economic empowerment, it's a major thing for women, because 40% of the economy is women-based, if I can say that. Now, what we should do, give them access to loans, like women-owned MSMEs. At least they should have more than 10% access to credits. Let's also come to the job creation and labor force participation. When we close the gender gap in workforce participation, we are adding so much money to GDPs, empowering women strategies like skills development, vocational training, entrepreneurship support. So economic participation is a major one.
Amanda Ezekwe Okogun is the Executive Director for Projects at the Center for Ability Rehabilitation and Empowerment in Nigeria. And in sports news, Sankole Janko joins me in studio. Sankole, what's the latest?
Of course, the latest, as you know, the Road to the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers hitting of our African qualifiers Zoom on Thursday, September 4, and some of the continent's football giants made some strong statements. Let's begin with Cameroon. They cruised to a 3-0 win over Eswatini. Algeria were also grabbed, 3-1 victory over Botswana. Meanwhile, Algeria will meet Guinea on Monday. But in the meantime, in Barkhane, Mali outclassed the Comoros 3-0. And Ghana, of course, were held to a 1-1 draw. Your Ghana were held to a 1-1 draw against Chad yesterday. In Reds, Tunisia were 3-0 winners against, of course, Liberia of all teams. And today there were some very interesting fixtures, even though we still have more fixtures tonight. But in the meanwhile, we have some results. And Somalia, for example, were defeated 3-0 by Guinea. Namibia were beaten by Malawi 2-1. South Sudan won. Democratic Republic of Congo, of course, 4. Kenya won. The Gambia 3. Uganda 4. Botswana, Mozambique 0. Congo 1. Tanzania 1, Djibouti 0, and Burkina Faso 6. Like you said, Captain Ibrahim Traore's Burkina Faso. Benin 1, Zimbabwe 0, Lesotho 0, South Africa 3. And we have some games, coming up in the next, 20 or so minutes.
Well.
Egypt will take on Ethiopia, Mauritania will take on Togo, and of course, Senegal, the Teranga Lions, will take on Sudan. Meanwhile, reigning African champions, Cote d'Ivoire will also take on Burundi at 7 o'clock, and Morocco will take on Niger.
Sankole, is it high time African countries just stop wanting to represent at the World Cup, just make an appearance at the World Cup, and then make a decisive attempt that we're making a statement at the World Cup anytime we appear? Because it seems like lots of countries are just excited about qualify for the World Cup, and then we have come.
No, it's not. I wouldn't have to agree with that. Come on, African teams have been doing extremely well lately in the World Cup. But mind you, we have Morocco. Come on, we're talking about semi-finalists here. They did extremely well, beating one of the biggest teams in the world. So no, we are excited because we know when we go there, we give our best.
Right, Sankole, thank you very much for sports this evening. And with that, we've come to the end of this evening's edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismaila Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook at WADR English Service. I am Christopher Ticho. Good evening and enjoy the rest of our broadcast.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Baga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.